everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie and this is all about my life after gastric bypass surgery, and today's video is all about hair loss. Everyone's always asking, so let me tell you everything I know in today's video. My fiance is going to be so happy that this hairball is finally out of our house. I've been saving this for a long time. So this is my very first disclaimer. This is a lot of hair saved up. This is not something I just pulled out today. Before we get too far into today's subject, I just want to say really quick housekeeping. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for continuing to support my videos. I really appreciate it, and it's the best way to support my channel at this point. If you are not yet a subscriber, I just ask that at the end of this video, if you do like this video, if you do like the information I'm putting out and you like the things that I put out on my channel, to just show your support by hitting the subscribe button and ringing the notification bell so you get notified anytime one of my videos goes live. I would say, just from what I see online and my experience so far in the community, hair loss and loose skin are the two biggest concerns that people have. And they're the things that people talk about, make them kind of question whether or not they want to go through with surgery. So they're big topics that really worry a lot of people. From a personal perspective, because that's all I really try to offer on my channel, is my experience, my personal perspective on things, and a little bit of research to support some of the things that I've been learning, is that, you know, my hair was a really big part of my identity. It's something that I could control. And being overweight all my entire life, hair was the thing that I turned to give me some sort of ability for self-expression. I have been morbidly obese most of my life, and so my clothing options were limited. There just wasn't the ability to be, you know, unique in high school, the kind of, you know, expression that kids go through clothes or accessories or things. I just wasn't, I didn't find that to be the case for myself. And from what I've heard from a lot of different people, a lot of us who are overweight, especially when we're young like that, really rely on our hair to make us feel good about ourselves, feel confident. When you have a good hair day, when you get a good haircut, or you get your hair done for a fancy event and it just, you feel on point, you know, that really made me feel more confident about myself when I was very not confident about my body and the way that I looked. I dyed my hair starting, I think the first time was when I was 13 or 14, and I just kind of went from there. I dyed my hair all sorts of interesting things through high school and through college. It was just the way that I used my hair to feel confident about myself. I 100% understand a lot of us who are overweight and start looking at, you mean I'm gonna lose my hair as part of this process? Like, that's what I turn to feel confident about myself. And you're telling me I'm gonna lose that and I'm still gonna be fat? So I totally understand, I get it. But I will caution you that if hair loss is the thing that is stopping you from doing this surgery, you know, maybe a pro and con list would be helpful. Maybe putting things in perspective and really determining what is important out of getting this surgery. What was the most important part for you? Because ultimately the hair loss is temporary. And that's the first thing I want to start out with this video. This is temporary hair loss. There's a lot of people who get really, really worried, but it's not supposed to be a permanent thing. And it can be uncomfortable. It can make you feel really self-conscious. Some people get it worse than others. So I understand the fear, but it's not a permanent thing. Whereas ideally, this surgery and what you're doing to change your body and your mind and your mindset around food will be a permanent change. So, you know, weigh that out as you will. So I'm just going to start off with information about hair in general. So your hair is mainly made up of proteins, and I've talked about this in other videos. If you reach all the way back and you grab those high school and middle school science classes, you'll remember that protein and amino acids are the building blocks of life. Your body uses protein to run a lot of its systems and do a lot of things. People have this very simplistic view of protein, especially because after surgery we're told to eat a lot of protein, prioritize your protein, and people really just kind of attribute protein with muscle. And part of that's the, muscle building, bodybuilding communities that got really popular somewhat recently. And you get a lot of that mentality seeping into all the real world. Protein is all about muscles all about protein. But really, protein is essential for a lot of body functions, and hair is one of them. Your hair is made of proteins. Additionally, when we're talking about proteins and amino acids, your body only produces about 13 amino acids. 9 amino acids need to come from your diet. They need to come from your food intake. And so you will not produce all of the amino acids that your body needs to run these processes, to build, these building blocks within your system. And so it's so important to make sure that you're getting not just the protein, but the amino acids from the protein. After surgery, our stomachs are smaller and we can therefore intake less calories, as is probably very apparent and the reason we're getting surgery. But with that also comes less nutrients. It's not just the calories that matter in the food that we eat. We get vitamins and nutrients. For example, a conversation I had with somebody on Facebook the other day comprised of the fact that she said salads that don't have a protein with them, like chicken, for example, have no nutritional value, which I see that statement said a lot about a lot of foods. I've had people tell me that corn on the cob has no nutritional value. It really is quite bothersome because aside from just the protein that you're getting from something, just the calories that something has, food has nutritional value. We get vitamins and minerals and things from a balanced diet. So here I am telling you how important protein is, but I also want to keep that balance in perspective. Having a balanced diet where you are making sure that you are getting the nutrition that your body needs to function is essential. A big part of that is protein, but just remember it's not the only part. So the hair process, the hair growth process happens in 2 stages. There's the anagen stage, and then there's the telogen stage. The alogen stage is when your hair is actively growing. And that happens for a pretty lengthy period of time. And about 90% or so of the hair on your head is at any given time going through the alogen growth stage. And then about 10% of your hair is going through the telogen phase, which is the inactive kind of resting stage. And so about 10% of that hair or so is just gonna be sleeping. It's not actually doing anything. It's resting. It's in the telogen phase. Because of that, it's pretty common to shed up to about 100 strands of hair or something a day. If you're anything like me, even before surgery, I had hair all over me. I was constantly picking it off. I shed a lot actually before surgery. So it's normal to shed your hair. Part of your hair is growing, part of your hair is resting. You get a little bit of hair shedding and hair loss through that natural process. Now, what happens is when your hair is in that telogen resting stage and it switches over to the anagen growth stage, that new hair starts to grow under the existing hair in the same hair follicle and it pushes it out. And you shed the hair. So when you're losing hair, it's actually because your hair is starting to grow again, and it pushes that sleeping, dead hair out of your scalp. What happens after bariatric surgery is the same thing that can happen under a lot of different medical circumstances. You can be extremely stressed and be going through an extremely stressing mental health issue. You could be going through menopause. You could be going through some sort of traumatic accident or something traumatic with your body. And a lot of people experience the same thing after they give birth. after they've had a child. And what it's called is telogen effluvium. It is a process that happens sometimes when your body goes through stress. And the reason for that is your body prioritizes what's important and what's not important, because your body prioritizes your life and sustaining your life force. I think a good example of this is kind of what your body does when you go through hypothermia as well. If you're extremely hypothermic, your body will stop sending blood out to your extremities, and you start to get, frostbite on, your nose or your ears or your fingertips. It essentially stops sending blood out to your limbs, because the most important thing is to keep that warm blood within your core, to keep your core insulated. Because honestly, these are, they're ancillary. You don't need them to survive, right? So keeping all that warmth, keeping all of that blood in this, your head and your torso is important for survival. It does seem super dramatic, but it's along the same lines. Your body naturally does this when something shocking happens, when there's something that, it needs to try to figure out what's going on. And so ultimately, what's happening after massive quick weight loss in our situation is that your body's going, oh my God, we're not getting nearly enough protein. We're not getting nearly enough calories. What happened? We just went from like 60 to 0. What's a priority and what's not a priority? Hair is not a priority. Everybody go to sleep. Is basically what's happening. So many more of your hair follicles and your hair strands will start to go into that telogen phase, because it is not extremely important to prioritize the hair growth. It's just not. Your body's trying to figure out what the heck you did. And until things start to mellow out and you're able to get the protein and the nutrients you need from your diet again, it's gonna freak out. It's gonna start prioritizing some things over others. So there's two things to take away from that. One is that you really need to focus on your nutrition and your protein. It is so important to make sure that you're getting between 60 and 100 grams of protein, depending on your particular situation, if you're a man or a woman, what surgery you got, what your doctor says. There is a sliding scale there. I see a lot of times, 80 grams of protein at least being recommended for this process to make sure that your body's getting what it needs to function. You need to make sure that you're prioritizing your nutrition, and that can take some time. And that's typically one reason why you see this hair loss issue start to crop up between 3 and 5 months after surgery. Because the first few months, you're still trying to get things figured out. You're still trying to establish a routine, see what works, what doesn't work. But as I said, the hair loss is actually something that happens when your hair starts to grow back, and it pushes out all of the sleeping hairs and starts new growth in those follicles. And so what that really means is that 3 to 5 months into this process, when you start to lose hair, it actually means your hair is growing back. So it is a good sign. So the second thing to take away from this is that there's not a lot you can do about it. Aside from prioritizing your nutrition and everything, it's just going to happen. To about 40 to 57% of people after weight loss surgery, they experience this hair loss. Everyone always asks, what can I do to stop this hair loss? What can I do to make things better and make my hair grow back? And honestly, by the time you're seeing hair loss, it's already been done. That process has already been done. There's really nothing that you can do about it other than to support the new growth. Make sure that you're supporting your new growth with proper nutrition. So again, making sure you're getting enough protein, but also making sure that you're getting your vitamins and the other nutrients that have been linked to hair loss. You'll see a lot of people recommend that you take a crap ton of biotin, and biotin is a B vitamin, and it's great for healthy hair and nail growth. It's great, but having thousands and thousands and thousands of milligrams of biotin is not really going to do what you think it's going to do. It's not going to stop your hair loss. And so having a moderate amount, like 10,000 milligrams, 20,000 milligrams of biotin is good to help support that new growth coming in. Folic acid is another one. Again, it's, hair and nail, they're made out of the same thing. They're made out of keratin. Those types of supplements are really good for helping support and make sure that you have nice, healthy hair and nails growing back as a result of this. Other things that have also been linked to hair loss are your iron levels and your zinc levels, and sometimes B12. And there was one study that I read that actually said a really good predictor for hair loss was whether or not iron and zinc levels were low in certain young females in particular. So making sure that you are getting all of your nutrition, iron and zinc, make sure that you're taking your multivitamins, make sure that you're prioritizing your supplements and going to your PCP and getting your lab works done periodically. Vitamin deficiencies are things that you don't necessarily see right away, especially in blood work. So it's important to be getting your levels checked and going to your doctor every few months for the first year, just to make sure that nothing sneaks up on you. So if your hair loss lasts longer than about 12 months and you don't start to see dramatic improvements with the amount of shedding going on, then you really do want to make sure you talk to your doctor and make sure that there's no underlying conditions that are causing or adding to that hair loss, because the Telogen effluvium specifically is temporary and really should only last a maximum of about 12 months or so. So you just want to make sure that you are staying perfectly healthy and that you're making sure that you're hitting all of your nutrition goals and you're keeping those things in mind. Running out and buying all the special hair loss shampoos, taking all the special supplements, it's not unhelpful, but it's not going to have the effect that most people are hoping for, which is that they inundate themselves with all of this extra stuff and they take all these extra steps and suddenly their hair loss is going to stop completely. And it's just not part of this process. It's not the way that it works, unfortunately. I've been very fortunate that I haven't experienced a lot of hair loss, but my head has thinned considerably. This is not what it used to be. I used to be able to put my hair up in a bun and it was a big, fluffy, big bun in the back of my head, and it just doesn't do that anymore. It's very thin hair and there's not a lot of it anymore in terms of, all over my head. And like you can see in situations like this, it looks a little bit thinner. It's probably more noticeable to me than anyone else because I know what my hair was like beforehand. Whereas I've gotten actually several comments from people on Instagram or on YouTube talking about how my hair looks great and I haven't gotten a lot of hair loss. And so for most people, you're going to be your biggest critic. You're going to be the one who notices way more than somebody else notices. That being said, some people do get a lot of thinning and it is a lot more noticeable. And unfortunately, sometimes that just happens to some people. And I would talk to a doctor and I'd talk to maybe your hairdresser and see if there's anything that you can do. Certain extensions are things that I've heard that people have done, although you want to be careful about what extensions you're getting because some can actually be problematic and pull and put too much strain on the hair. One of the things you want to do when you're experiencing this hair loss is not put too much strain and have too much going on with your hair. So no aggressive, crazy brushing because it's just going to encourage those telogen hairs to just fall out faster. I personally was washing my hair only every other day when I was going through this. And there are some benefits for that just overall for hair health. If I had an important meeting or was meeting with a client, maybe I'd take an extra shower. But for the most part, I was giving my hair a little bit of rest, making sure that I wasn't aggressively pulling and washing on it too much during this process until things got a little bit, mellowed out. And the other thing I did, and you can go back in my videos, is probably about the 5-month mark, is I chopped a lot of my hair off and I specifically asked her to put a bunch of layers in it because what was bothering me the most was that when I was showering and when I was feeling, running my hands through my hair and feeling that hair loss, they were long strands and they get caught in my fingers and it was just extremely noticeable because they were long strands. And so I chopped it way short and got a lot of layers so that when it did come out, they were much shorter and they didn't seem so dramatic. That being said, I ended up hating that haircut and wishing that I hadn't done it. So I'm glad that my hair has grown back out. I've known a lot of people who've just gone full pixie cut and said, screw it, I'm cutting it really short and I'm just gonna ride this out. And that's my biggest advice for this, is to just ride it out. It is not the most important thing. I understand, as I said before, that hair is really, really important to a lot of us for a lot of different reasons. And so it may put us in a very vulnerable spot to be like that and to feel like that part of you is something that you no longer have control over. But it will get better. It will go away. And if you see, you know, in a lot of my videos, you'll probably see that I do have a lot of these flyaways and these little short strands that like to sit up here. I just took a shower, so they're sitting very nicely. But I have a lot of these shorter strands that, you know, after a full day, sometimes they stand up and they're a little frizzy. And that's just proof that it's growing back. It takes some time. There's that awkward stage when, you know, they're like this long and you gotta like keep them down. But it does get better. It'll grow back. And I've heard a lot of people have experienced that their hair grows back very healthy and much thicker than it did before. So just prioritize that new growth and do the best that you can to support the new growth that's happening. So there you go. That's pretty much everything I know about hair loss after surgery and everything that I experienced. If you experienced something different, I'd love to hear from you and what your experience was. I know it's kind of all over the spectrum. Like I said, between 40 and 57% in one study that I read of people experienced this. So, you know, there's a pretty large amount of people that experience telogen effluvium, and they probably all experience it on a different spectrum. So I'd love to hear what your experience was like and how you got through it, because it can be really trying. I think hair loss is a really good example of how the mental health portion of this journey is really important, because hair loss itself is so superficial, and I don't mean that in a mean way. It's just hair is not important to your body's functioning. It's very, very superficial, and yet it plays such a huge role in a lot of our mental health, our confidence, how we feel about ourselves. So it is a really good example of the mental health toll this whole process can take on us. So thanks for watching. Make sure you stay happy and healthy and always look at the big picture, and I will see you guys in the next one.